Got the full trigger, didn't get to hold it long. Stayed down nicely. Validation right there, baby. I have on the bench the world's fastest Proboat Ul19 running on stock electronics. And that was a 76-mile-an-hour pass by this boat right here in northern Wisconsin. And I'm going to go over my entire setup so you can get your Ul19 at least running north of 70 miles an hour. I'll show you the prop I used and some tools along with a flat board. Straight edge, pair of 1-inch blocks, a shim, and a square. I also sharpened, balanced, and polished my own prop, and I have blueprinted the ride pads, but I'm not going to cover that in this video. Okay, let's get this off the board and we'll get started. First of all, the board must be flat. So I'm using a straight edge, and this board is not perfectly flat, but I need it to be flat over this length. So right down the center, where I'm most concerned with, it's pretty much perfectly flat, and especially right in here. That's where the strut angle is going to be set off of this surface. Taking a closer look at the board, I have some reference marks here and here. 2 marks here and a mark here. These reference marks are to repeat my setup. So first you have to set the boat up on the board and then make the marks. These 2 are to line up the hull parallel to the edge of the board, and I do that by putting the shim down first, and then I set the boat on the shim, the sponsons right on the shim, and I line up the near side of the strut to this mark. These 2 marks here verify that it's running parallel to this board. You will need to find a shim that the thickness of the shim with the strut sitting on the board, the shim will come to the center line of the prop shaft. I am using a piece of Revolution ply or underlayment, and it is 4 millimeters thick or 157 thou, and that is perfectly the height of the center line of the prop shaft from the board to that center line. Now I'm going to place this shim where I've located these marks from setting this up before, and this has to be wide enough so both sponsons can sit on it, and located so that the turn fin, located this way so the turn fin doesn't hit the shim. Place the strut aligned with this mark. I'm going to slide the hull over so that the turn fin is just resting against this edge of the board and setting on the shims. The ride pads are setting on that shim. And now it is placed on the board at the attitude that the boat will run when it's up on top of the water. At this point in the setup, the bottom of the sponsons are level with the center line of the prop shaft. A surface running prop will climb up onto the water to the point where the center line of the prop shaft will be level with the top surface of the water. So we've recreated this on the board, the prop shaft being at a 0-degree angle to the bottom of the sponsons. And now we can begin to make adjustments to our setup that will affect how the boat will run on the water, running at this angle or this attitude. I've set the boat up on the board and made these 2 marks here to align the center line of the boat parallel to this edge of the board. I can check that by using a square at the 2 marks, and I can get it back to that position by aligning the strut up with this mark and sliding the turn fin so it just gently touches against the side of the board. Now I can also use the side of the board to square up my turn fin this way and this way. Another adjustment to try to eliminate any drag from the turn fin. I want it running straight or neutral to the center line of the hull. The last part of this setup is establishing the bottom of the hull parallel to the board. This is a setting that I never change, and that would be the depth of the strut, because at these speeds, with this wing up front being fixed, I do not want to change that attitude on the boat. I will change the angle, but not that height. So to establish that, with this shim, the 4mm shim, and the strut setting flat on the board, I've found 1-inch blocks to be perfect for leveling the bottom of the hull. I say the flat part of the hull because there's a relief angle, 1/2 degree relief angle, starts right about here in front of the fin to let the pressure out from under the hull when it's running. So if I slip this under here, it just has a little bit of drag with my strut setting flush on the board. Come back to here, just a little bit of drag. As you move back in here, you can see that angle. Don't set it 1 inch here and here. It'll be riding with the nose too high and it'll blow off. The back of the boat will be low and you won't have the right relationship to this front wing. So I have 2 blocks. Slip the one under here, just slips under. One on the other side. And at this point, I can loosen this bolt up and the boat is on the blocks. And I will push it down flat or flush on the board, and then I will change that angle to either make the boat run looser or wetter. So for a new setup, you have to establish this first with this loosened and the strut raised, and then bring it down so it's set to the angle of the bottom of the hull. I have this set up with a flashlight behind it so you can see the gap in the front here. And here's how I measure it. I have a pack of shims, a 10 thou, a 5 thou, a 2, and a 1 thou shim. You can come up with any measurement you need. I will show you what my current setup is. I have a 10, a 2, and a 1 thou shim. So the front of my strut, if I slide this under here, just drags. That will hold them shims under there and put them in place. You can see if I pull on it, front of my strut is 10 thousandths of an inch higher than the back. My initial run, the video where I blew it off the water and did a backflip at 67 miles an hour, I started out with it set at 0. So I came back here and I happen to know over this length that is exactly 1 degree. I flipped the boat over, used my digital protractor, checking off the bottom of the hull. I adjusted that 1 degree. I set it up here, eyeballed the gap, and then I checked it, and I had changed it 1 degree, which is 13 thousandths of an inch high in the front. And that is the setting that I ran 76 miles an hour. There's more to it. There's a relationship between your center of gravity and your prop, the rake angle. I have altered the turn fin slightly. I'll show you that in a minute to reduce the drag, but this is the critical setting right here as far as the boat staying on the water and getting a max speed versus if you have too much negative and it running too wet, or you make a run and then you want to make a change, slight change from a known setting. So all I wanted to do was to bring it down a little bit. So I put in 1 degree of negative angle to the strut, same height, 76 miles an hour on the next run. No guesswork here. I know from one run to the next with this setup the change I'm going to make to my boat. Here's how much I've cut off my turn fin. 1/2 of an inch. Bought another one for when I want to run laps. Have the full effect of a turn fin. But again, straight up and down, square to the center line of the boat. Shorten turn fin. And that's how I set up my Ul19. I run the batteries all the way forward, but the amount you can move it on the stock tray, I don't find it makes much difference. You need good batteries. Need horsepower at some point when you have the boat riding the way it needs to for a saw run. Props make a difference. I sharpen, balance, and polish my own props. Originally I was running on the stock stainless steel prop, 1716 prop, and I got that 74.7 run that was disputed so hotly on YouTube. It was a good run though. Some people just don't believe I could get there that quick, but ran a bunch of runs, 71 to 73, 73.2, and then I got this ABC 1716 1745 prop. That would be the same one that Daz Boda would sell you for this boat. He does a nice job prepping props, one of the best in the world actually. But I've been able to get these kind of speeds doing props myself. But prop is definitely a factor. Get a Daz Boda prop if you don't want to dive into prepping props. But critical attitude of the boat, all the stuff I went through, and then the only thing that I play with after that, how loose or wet the boat's running, and make incremental changes. That's the ticket to going fast to me, is making incremental changes from prior known settings. Go run the boat, watch what it does with the prop you got, better lipos. How do you manage that power? Maybe from a prior setting, you got better batteries where it was not going fast enough to blow off and it'll blow off. That's kind of what happened to me. So with the better batteries, I had to actually set it up slightly wetter. But I only went 1 degree and nailed that 76 mile an hour pass. So do that, and there's no mistaking it. You got to put in the time. It's a lot of work, many trips to the water, but that's how I've learned to go fast with a radio controlled boat.